Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. Today, of course, we're talking about the box office. Now, we need to look at it as, well, a year-to-year kind of a conversation, the largest possible picture when you step back. And over the course of this decade, things have not gone in the right direction. The previous decade had the most amount of growth in the box office that we've ever seen. And that was at a time when, well, inflation hadn't fully kicked in here in the United States. Now there are significantly less people going to see films, and yet the numbers are still dropping at the box office despite a massive ticket price increase. So we have to talk about the raw box office for 2026 and how much weaker it is compared to 2025. Here we go. When injustice strikes, I strike back. Now, before we get started, here's a real quick reminder. I am trying to get to 50K. You guys have probably heard that like 100 times in the last 2 months, but it's the truth, and I need your help, and a lot of you have been helping me. Just please double check you're still subscribed, and if that button's red, click on it, subscribe, and turn it to gray. Then hit the little bell icon next to it and turn on all notifications so you don't miss anything. I would truly appreciate it, and it's going a long way to getting us towards our goal. Beyond that, if you hit the thumbs up button right now, you save yourself a step because, you want to do it later. And finally, when we get to the end of this video, I want to hear what you think about the box office and what likely performance issues it's going to have as compared to 2025 and 2024. The numbers are going down and they're not looking better. Hollywood is in more trouble indeed. The 2026 domestic box office is weaker than 2025, adjusted for inflation. This piece you can find over at That Park Place, and it was written by WDW Pro himself. And interestingly enough, the adjustment for inflation is the things that, well, is kind of terrifying. Because if you can believe it, after 2 months of 2026, the spring is almost upon us. And after a very rough last 2 years, Hollywood's domestic box office actually, it's been awful since the pandemic, which is true. Many were hoping this year would finally signal a turnaround. However, and unfortunately, the opposite is true. It's looking like 2026 could be one of the most disappointing box office years we've ever seen, when accounting for opportunity cost and loss. Look, there are a lot of factors in play, and it's not just inflation or the exorbitant price of tickets anymore. It's that the entertainment dollar is so thin that it only goes so far. So if you're not making things that are appealing to the broadest possible audience, you're missing out on those opportunities and you're missing out on those people as well. Now, given the theater chains like AMC and Regal have recently sounded the alarm in their earnings calls about the end of 2025, is there any sunshine in calendar Q1 of this year so far? Not much. Is there any reason to hope that Hollywood might rebound? Probably not. In fact, we're going to see more earnings statements, not just today as you're watching this video, or maybe it already happened, from, I think, Warner's and also from Netflix. So two people competing to, well, merge with each other, but are also going to have to talk about, well, things that are going to be uncomfortable. It's not just the theater chains. The studios know these things as well. And in January of 2025, it was a relatively quiet start to the year. And unfortunately, that's a pattern that continues to repeat itself. January and February are both kind of empty, and they don't really have a lot of big budget tent poles that are being released then. Oftentimes it's about March where we start to see things enter the marketplace, and that's where real change occurs. So the Lion King led the early weekends in carryover from 2024. Titles such as Flight Risk and Den of Thieves 2, Pantera contributed steady but unspectacular returns. Overall, the revenue for the month reflected a modest beginning compared to a stronger early year performance in past cycles. Although to me, since 2020, these numbers have not been stellar. Now in 2026, January this year, it's significantly stronger. Major December 2025 releases continued to generate large receipts into the new year. Avatar, Fire, and Ash alone contributed more than $134 million domestically, which was substantial. Let's not pretend it wasn't. And during January, other holders like Zootopia 2 added substantial revenue. January of 2026 generated approximately $619.5 million in domestic box office, marking a clear year-over-year increase from January of 2025. However, and this is a big however, February 2025 was anchored by a major blockbuster. Captain America Brave New World grossed roughly $200.5 million domestically during its run, powering the month's revenue and underperforming at the same time. Additional releases such as Dogman and Hard Eyes helped round out the slate. Thanks to one dominant tentpole, February 2025 posted a robust total compared with January of the same year. And you know what? That happens. It's helpful. No matter what you think of Captain America Brave New World, it did what it needed to do. It drove some revenue to the theaters. It didn't really empower Marvel in any way. In fact, they lost money on that movie, but it did lift the box office in the theater chains, and that's a good thing. I can't argue with that. But in 2026, and this is where we get into it, it featured a broader mix of mid-range performance rather than a standout blockbuster. Films such as Withering Heights, which is a financial disaster as far as I'm concerned, unless it performs spectacularly this upcoming weekend. Goat, which actually passed Wuthering Heights in its second weekend. Send Help, which was a middling offering at best. And Crime 101, which was widely rejected by the largest possible audience. Those have contributed numbers, I'm not going to say solid pro, though none individually matched the scale of February 2025's leading release. As a result, while February 2026 remains semi-healthy, that's a strongly favorable accusation there, I'm not sure I agree with, it is not relied on a single breakout hit to drive the majority of its revenue. And while we're not finishing with February just quite yet, we're only a few days away from it, I think we can call it done. There aren't any signs of big box office numbers being drawn in the final days because, well, there just isn't anything. You're not going to see things jump up in performance, and fewer people are going to the cinemas, just like fewer people are going to Broadway right now. And again, it speaks more to that conversation I already started. People have only so many dollars to spend on entertainment, so if you're not something spectacular, you're going to be largely ignored. And that leads us into the conversation of the February comparison, which is February 2025 benefited from a single high-performing superhero release that elevated the monthly total. February of 2026, by contrast, demonstrated steadier distribution across several moderately successful titles. Still, movies like Goat and Wuthering Heights might get some kind of praise for finding money after the box office via streaming. They've been pretty lackluster for driving butts into the seats. And that's the biggest problem of all. You need the same number of people to return year after year to fight inflation if you're a cinema owner. It's not just the folks in the audience that are being careful with their dollars. These cinema companies are having to find new ways of investing into their buildings, such as new restaurants, different ways to get offerings, things like that, so they can bring customers into a more complete, fulfilling experience. Because guess what? The films aren't doing that, and the audience knows. Now, if you take the cumulative domestic totals of the first 2 months of each year, it's even clearer to take a look at the performance because in January and February of 2025, approximately $987.9 million domestically through February 24. So we're doing apples to apples, and Pro does that pretty well. But January to February of 2026, approximately $991.9 million domestically through the same days. Now, while monthly breakdowns show that January 2026 is higher, outpaced January 2025, February 2025 may have had a slight edge over February of 2026. Individually, the combined year-to-date totals indicate that 2026 held a narrow lead, roughly $4 million by those dates in February. However, and this is the problem, and Pro calls it out correctly, when adjusted for inflation, the January and February 2026 totals thus far are significantly lower than the 2025 numbers. And again, adjusted for inflation, it doesn't seem like the remaining days will be able to make up for that. In fact, adjusted for inflation, the 2025 numbers are actually just a little over $1 billion. That means 2026 is coming in short on an apples to apples transactional level by about $26 million to be exact. And perhaps to some that seems a little bit nitpicky. Maybe it is. I don't think it is. But at least it kind of breaks down where film is breaking down, cinemas are breaking down, and how the impact of fewer wider releases in theaters in the first 2 months of the year are going to hurt the overall quarter and perhaps even the first half of the year for these cinema companies. And we will see that probably reflected in their earnings reports. If we've already seen two, we've got a few more to see. But I think it's going to tell us something that maybe Hollywood should be focused on. We need more movies. We need more good movies. And we need less tentpoles? Maybe. Just maybe. And Pro responds to the idea that if there's 4 days left to tally, surely it'll pass $26 million, the difference between here and there. And he says, let me remind you that movie ticket prices have far exceeded the rate of inflation, and they have. So if you were to double that $26 million to be accurate, it's likely pretty darn close to correct. So here we are. The result might just be looking at even more reasons to take a hold of AI, independent content creators, and anything else that could save the theatrical experience from extinction. Now, look, that was entirely an opinion piece by WDW Pro. And while I agree with it almost exactly, with a few choice and verbiage aside, I'll say that this is coming from a very strong place, a reasoned place, a logical place. And that is, this year could be the beginning of an even starker downturn in the overall performance of the box office. We didn't set records last year. I don't think we're going to set new records this year, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, which means there'll be less money made in the theaters, which means theaters may have to cut back on employees, and rely more on AI and robots. Believe it or not, starting to see those in theaters now. And when I say robots, I'm just saying the cooking machines and things like that. I'm not certain we'll get around to the actual robots serving you your beverages and your candy at the counter. I just think that's definitely something that's going to happen at some point, because for, 20, 30K, you can own a robot and you are paying less for that and its operation than you would be for an employee, because by the time you pay an employee and the insurance and all the other things that go along with paying an employee, then, you're spending a lot more than, let's say, $20,000 or $30,000. And that gets pretty wild. Setting all of that aside for now, let's just discuss the possibility, and I want you to weigh in the comment section down below, that 2026 isn't going to be a stellar year for the cinemas. I think they're going to do rather poorly. And in turn, the studios are going to do even worse. So if you've ever wondered what the motivations might be, why studios are getting together or merging together, there's really only one reason: to make things cheaper. I don't think you're going to get less productions if Paramount acquires Warner Brothers Discovery. I think you're going to get less people, and the bloat in the studios is not really helping any of them survive. Just ask Disney. Regardless, I want your opinion, as I said before, so give it to me down in the comments section below. Do you think 2026 is going to finish lower than 2025? Do you think there are any movies out there that are going to overdraw expectations, or are we going to see a steady slate of underperformers? And that might also include, at the end of the year, Doomsday. Your thoughts are as good as mine, so let me know down in the comments section below. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, See ya. Just maybe not at one of these overpriced movies.